Okay, so we're continuing off in Pirkei Avot from where we left off. We're still holding in Perek Aleph. And now we're holding Mishnah Yud Gimel. We'll do Mishnah Yud Gimel and Yud Dalet. Last Mishnah we did was Hillel and Shammai, who were the next generation, who received the Masorah, the tradition, to teach it on to others. And we're holding by what Hillel wants to share with us. The last Mishnah was about how important it is to follow in the ways of Aharon. Aharon had a very good approach in life in dealing with people. He was kind-hearted, he was interested in others, he was helpful, he pursued peace, he was a man of peace himself, did his best to bring them close to Torah and so forth. And we explained how it's more beneficial for a person in life in general to be more flexible, more easygoing, nice to people. And people, of course, can identify that. And by being like that, if one is a teacher or a parent or a friend, one is more effective than being strict, being demanding, and so forth. It's just that, in some ways it's common sense, but not everybody realizes it. That's why he has to tell us that this is the right approach, also in bringing people closer to the Torah. So Hillel continues on after telling us about how important the approach of Ohev Shalom and Rodef Shalom is, the pursuit of peace, trying to improve people's life, trying to show interest in others. In the following Mishnah, he tells us something very, very different. A person who is interested in the pursuit of aggrandizing his name. He wants to be popular. He wants to be in the highest position possible. He wants his name to be known. That's called Negad Shema, one who wants his name to come out, to be known. Avat Shmei, in the end, his name will be forgotten. His name will not be what it could have been. Because his interest was in himself, he will not gain what he intended to gain. This is very opposite of the previous Mishnah, where Hillel is telling us to be involved in others, to do for others. How many benefits there are for those who think of others, those who want to make other people's life better. Here he tells us the opposite, on the opposite end. You may have an individual who is interested in himself instead of in others. He wants to further his cause, his agenda. He cares more about his interest. This individual loses out. Whereas the other individual who's into the lives of others, who wants to promote peace, make peace between husband and wife and so forth, he has a good chance of success, especially if he's really sincere. He's a man of peace himself. Here we have an individual who's just the opposite, who's more interested, and his focus is entirely in himself. So therefore his name that he's trying to make for himself, Avat Shmei, it will be lost. This is very similar to what the rabbis tell us, Kol harodef achar hakavod, hakavod boreach mimeno. Whoever wants kavod, he wants people to honor him, and he tries his best to get honored, the kavod will run away from him. People will not give him the kavod. Whoever boreach mi hakavod, he doesn't want people to honor him. He doesn't care for it. He doesn't need it. He tries to stay away from it, right? Even though people insist that he get the position of honor, and he doesn't want it. In the end, people will honor him. He doesn't want it. He gets it. He wants it. He doesn't get it. So this is what Hillel is telling us, that in the end, this is what happens. And don't think anything has changed. Whatever was true in the past is true in the present and will be true in the future. One who's more into himself in a negative way, obviously. In other words, he wants to pursue his own agenda, his own name, not for a good reason. In other words, just for the kavod purposes, that name will disappear. In other words, that name will not be achieved like he thought it would be. the main point behind this statement is what? Not just about kavod. It's about doing things l'shem shamayim, which is the connection to the previous Mishnah. In the previous Mishnah, in being from the students of Aharon, of pursuing peace, why should somebody want to pursue peace? Why should somebody care and make an effort to help couples who are having a hard time? Because that is the will of Hashem. Obviously, that is what Hashem wants. Hashem would agree with it. Hashem would approve. Hashem would encourage us to do something like that if we are capable. You need to know what you're doing. You need patience. But more than that, you need the desire. You need to be genuine about it. You can't fake it. You have to be yourself a man of peace. So we see from that the focus of the previous Mishnah and the idea behind these words is the same. Do things Hashem Shamayim. Person who does it for himself, all his cares is about himself. It's obviously not Hashem Shamayim. It's a conflict between what a person may want for himself and what Hashem may want of him. So somebody who has his own personal interest, his own personal agenda, cannot be successful. First of all, Hashem will not help him, as we will see later on. In the same way, when a person does things Hashem Shamayim, he actually receives guidance and assistance from above. The next statement he makes in the same Mishnah, Udelo Masif Yasif. One who does not add to his learning will forget his learning. He says actually 4 things here. He talks about the name, he talks about learning, he talks about teaching as well, and about using the crown of Torah. And as we will see, it all has to do with Avodat Hashem, or the lack of it, the service of Hashem, which part of it means to learn. When a person learns Torah, he gets to know his tachlit, he gets to know what he's doing here, what is life all about. He's able to focus properly on doing the right things. He's able to prioritize. A lot of people, the reason why they do not succeed in life, I'm not talking about money right now. Money is not considered success. It's considered mazal. Success means a successful marriage, a successful relationship with one's children, hopefully with friends and neighbors, achieving something in learning, and obviously performance of mitzvot. Person, Baruch Hashem, accumulates credits to his name. He does what they want him to do. That is called success. So Torah is a very important part of guaranteeing that success, and therefore he tells us, listen, if you don't increase your learning on a regular basis, increase. He doesn't just say learning. Udelo mosif. If you don't increase, continuously learn and add and add and add, you forget, you lose. This is a different kind of a loss. Here we're not talking about the name becoming lost or his reputation disappearing. Here we're talking about the actual, whatever he may have learned at one time is lost. The importance of continuing to learn is understood as follows. A child, when he's growing up and he's still young, the first thing he begins to do is to learn how to crawl and how to walk and how to talk, right? That's what happens in the early stages of his development. You think that's where it stops? Imagine a person stopped. He acquired the skills of learning how to walk and he knows how to talk. And now he's 25 years old. And he has the same amount of knowledge he had when he was 5 years old, 3 years old. I don't think that would be too good. Nobody would want somebody 25 years old to resemble somebody who's 5 years old. We're not talking about height right now. Forget about physical. I'm talking about knowledge, the ability to maturity, the ability to manage life. Man continuously grows, not physically, but supposedly spiritually, and in knowledge. Knowledge, therefore, is something very, very critical to be able to know how to manage yourself in life, how to deal with problems, how to react, how to, to figure out right from wrong. That requires knowledge and experience. So the lo mosif, therefore, if a person does not increase with age, with time, more and more learning, then he forgets even with that which he has learned. In other words, with Torah, you cannot stop. You have to continuously learn more and more, because there's also a danger of, if you do not learn, that which was learned will be forgotten. And that's something very, very interesting. Why should that happen? Why should somebody forget that which was learned years ago? So rabbis tell us, Im ta'azveni yom, yomai ma'azveka, that the Torah says, if you leave me, abandon me for one day, I will abandon you for 2 days. In other words, for every day that a person does not learn Torah, he loses 2 days of knowledge. But how does that happen? I mean, there are people who have a photographic memory. There are people who can retain everything they learned. There are people that remember quite a bit. So what does it exactly mean that a person loses twice as much of what he had acquired once upon a time? What happens with time does two things to the individual when it comes to learning, or lack of learning, I should say. A person does not learn one day. Instead of going back, regressing one day, for that one day not learning, we said he regresses 2 days. The 2 days happens as a result of two factors, or two consequences that are occurring as a result of detachment from Torah. Number one, as a result of his detachment, there's less appreciation for the Torah. You didn't learn today. The appreciation or the love or the interest of Torah has been devalued, has been degraded, has become weakened. When appreciation of Torah is weakened, so is the attachment to the Torah. He may not go back into it as fast. What else happens with time? Erosion. Time has the effect of eroding that which was learned. It's no longer fresh. It's not the same. Even if you remember something, it's not the same as though you just learned it recently. When we review or we learn more, that which was already learned has a freshness to it. It affects us. It builds us. If we don't continuously recharge our batteries, if we can use that term, then even that which we have is weakened. So that's the meaning over here of if we do not add to the learning, if we do not increase our learning on a regular basis, then even that which we have, we tend to lose over time. And one way to look at it is through the term atrophy. I don't know how many of you understand what atrophy is. You don't use your muscles. You don't do physical therapy. You don't walk. You don't exercise. Then your muscles become atrophy. In other words, they become stiff. What you don't use, you tend to lose. Right? So you gotta continuously use. Same thing with the mind. There's a lot of people in the older years, because they did not use their mind, or they stopped using their mind, looking and staring at the walls, or at the TV, or playing cards, or waiting for the Malach HaMavet to take them. Yeah. Especially if they have no kids, or they have kids who don't visit them. Imagine them. Poor people. He may have had all the money in the world. Millions of dollars. How does that help him? Yeah. What a shame. The mind is not functioning. Mind is not working. Chachamim, unless they become sick, because the mind continuously worked, right? Even in their 90s, 100, they're still using it. They're still learning. And they're understanding things even better than they did in their earlier years. Why would somebody not want to learn? Why would somebody just stop learning? Well, obviously there's all kinds of reasons, but the problem is not so much the time. What's dangerous is the attitude. Time, you can always find some time. What's dangerous is when a person says, I've learned everything. I know everything, he says. Or there's nobody else that can teach me. There are people who actually think that way. Believe it or not, it's incredible. Yeah. On him it is said, Udelo mosif yesif. Yesif is also a term used to mean death. You don't learn, then you die. In other words, it's not only a term used to describe that what you've gained you may lose, but it's also you cease to exist. Not so much die, but you cease to exist. Because the essence of man is kihem hayenu ve'orach yamenu, is that through the mitzvot and the learning of Torah, he will live. He will have a purpose to live. Life makes sense. I see, I learn, I perform the mitzvot, I build up myself, even though we're not supposed to think of olam haba, but that's exactly part of it. In other words, we prepare ourselves, we mature, we become stronger, our emunah is more developed, it's more firm. We gain so much by observance of Torah and mitzvot. Person, therefore, who stops doing that, he ceases to exist. In other words, there's no meaning to his existence anymore. Why should he be alive? Why continue to live? Kihem hayenu ve'orach yamenu. The Torah is a wellspring of life. It's what gives us life. It gives us reason to live, purpose for life. So when a person therefore stops that, yasif, he ceases to exist. In other words, there's no reason for him to exist. What's a good reason for him to exist? Just to enjoy? Just to have ice cream? To go on a vacation? I mean, what's life for? Make more money? What for? You're not going to take it with you. So without Torah, that doesn't make sense. So the essence of man ceases to exist at that point. Especially, as the Rambam points out, a person who once upon a time used to learn a lot and he stopped learning. Kola poresh, in other words, he used to learn shana ufarash, in other words, he completely left Torah. That is also very, very big kitrug and a big accusation of him Hashemayim. How could you be so disrespectful? If you, of all people, learned Torah and you knew the value of Torah, how could you ever let go of it? Whereas a person who grew up in Siberia, who doesn't know any better, all right, so he's losing out a lot. But the one who knows, he learned, he went to yeshivot, and he stops it, on him there's a big accusation, so it's very dangerous. Yasif means that they may take him away. In other words, he's endangering his life. It's a very, very serious thing. You want to ask something? Yeah. No. Anyway, so that is the meaning of Udelo Mosif Yasif, especially applicable to somebody who did learn, knows the value of Torah, and stops. I mean, what could take the place of Torah? What's better? What's more important there? It also could apply to somebody who doesn't teach. A person who's able to teach, why stop teaching? In other words, if that's your purpose, if that's what you're good in, and people have so much to gain from it, this is what gives life. And since you take away life, or you're not interested in life, then you don't deserve to live. So that is why Yasif could also mean that they take him away. In other words, you're not interested in what you're here for, then let's take you back. In order to understand this on a deeper level, life is about, for human beings at least, is about a purpose. And that purpose is spiritual in nature. Even though it's true that man contributes in a physical way too, he plows the earth, he bakes bread. I mean, we do physical things too in the physical world. We have to do physical things. But that's not the ultimate tachlit. The ultimate tachlit of the world is lit'alot, is to elevate oneself spiritually. That is what we're created for, is for us to develop and grow closer and closer to Hashem in the physical world. Since that is the tachlit, everything else is secondary. Everything else could be important, could be okay and acceptable, but it's secondary. In order for a person to succeed in developing himself spiritually, in other words, in order for him to achieve his tachlit, and for him to be able to completely, throughout his life, stay on the right track, he may need, I shouldn't say he may need, he for sure needs what we would say what we call in Hebrew, I think it's called in Hebrew, limudei hishtalmut. I don't remember the exact English term, but I'll describe you what it is. You have a job. You're a doctor. So what does it mean that you're a doctor? You got your degree. You went to school 8 years. Do you stop learning after you became a doctor and you're treating patients? Every hospital, every clinic, everywhere where you work as a doctor will require of you, or at least once a year, that you get
recertification.
What?
Recertification.
No, yeah, but what? How do you get recertified? That you attend courses where they complement or supplement your learning with current trends in medicine. Things change. You have to, what you learned in the 50s or 60s is very good. That's a foundation. But you got to be up to date with new ways of surgery, new tools, new medication, antibiotics, right? So they make you, in many, many professions, they make you be up to date in your learning in order that you should basically know what's going on. Otherwise, you're lacking. Otherwise, you're not as effective, not as efficient. You're not as good. So in the same way that in all these kinds of professions, a person has to continue to learn, to grow, to know more. The more so in the Torah. But as we were saying, the reason why with Torah is so much more important is not only for knowledge, it's for growth. And it's to fulfill our purpose in life. So how do we fulfill our purpose in life by learning Torah? So the Kabbalah explains, there are 4 levels of creations in this physical world. 4 levels of existence, perhaps, is a better word for it. There is the domem, someach, chai, medaber. Domem is inanimate objects. Soil and rocks. Inanimate. It has no life. It has no locomotion. Doesn't even move. Right? It's inanimate. Stands alone. It's the lowest level of existence. One level above that is tzomeach, the plant life, organisms. It doesn't just stand alone, it grows. Right? It's a little bit higher level than the one that below it. Then you have a third level, that's high, animal life. Not only does it grow, it moves. It has sensation. And then you have the fourth level, the highest level, medaber, the human being who also has the intellect, the power of speech. Ha'adam has everything below him, everything that's beneath him. He consists of all the levels in one, but he has something more than the ones below him. So each level, what did we see, is higher than the other. There's 4 levels, right? There's one on top of the other. The one that's all the way in the bottom serves the one that's right above it. The plants need soil through which to grow. Animals eat the plants. And the human being uses animals for food, for transportation, for clothing. You see? So, kol darga mesharetet et hadarga me'alav. Right? Every level serves the level above it. So there's a connectivity, there's a connection here between all of them, but each one is there for a purpose. And what is that purpose? To serve the one above it. So the human being who's above all the 3 beneath him serves who? Hashem. Serves the ultimate tachlit. In other words, his serving is not a physical level or another creature. He's serving the ultimate. He consists of all the levels. So he is there for what? For the ultimate purpose of life, which is what? Which is spiritual, which is the service of Hashem. That's what we're here for. We're not just here to walk around. People don't understand, Hashem did not just throw us into this world. Hey, just get along, eat, drink, sleep, have fun, travel, No. That's not the purpose. We do that, we can do it. Enjoy. Fine. But that's not the purpose. The human being, having a neshama, having all the levels within him, is created and intended for a higher, loftier purpose. What's that? The tachlit, the purpose of life, in the essence of life. And that's the service of Hashem. Of course, that cannot be reached if a person does not learn Torah, does not perform mitzvot. We're talking about Goyim too, by the way. They have the 7 Noahide laws. They have to behave themselves. But the Jew, because he has a unique mission, is more representative of this ultimate tachlit than the non-Jew. So what happens when a Jew, or when a human being in general, mazniach, what's the English word for mazniach? He ignores, neglects, thank you. Et ha-mechuyavut shelo, he neglects his ultimate responsibilities, which is the service of Hashem. Then from level number 4, he goes down to level number 3. He's an animal. Nothing better, nothing different. He doesn't, because he's not serving, he's not doing what he's supposed to do on the 4th level. If he's not, he's basically an animal. I don't even want to share with you what I've seen lately because it's terrible. You see the world of Goyim today is so low, so not spiritual, that men and women are identifying much more with their physical bodies. What I mean by that, I'm going to try to say it as tactful as possible. The world is into the physical. Could you imagine a woman being into her physical body? It's one thing to be into yourself by using makeup, dressing nice. That's normal. That's not only normal, that is acceptable, especially if you want to look nice to your very husband. But what if a woman does anything she can in an immodest way to sell herself? I think you now know what I mean. Everything becomes the flesh, the body. So she cuts away her dress. There's barely any strings left. You know what I mean? And all she has to show is a body. Obviously, because there's no brains. So what is she going to show? What's going to sell? What's going to attract the man? She wants to be attractive. She wants to sell herself. But it's not so much that she wants to be attractive. That's all her interest is in. You know what it's called today? Boyfriend, girlfriends. When somebody tells you that, it's not always the case. What he means is, I have somebody who I can do whatever I want and not get married. It was something which is not the ultimate purpose of life, which is marriage and children, in continuation, but just to connect like animals. So there's unfortunately, a big trend in the past, 30, 40 years, not only to pursue this, but to make this public knowledge common, something that's so common that it's everywhere. You hear it, you see it, people are not even, there's no more busha, no more shame. And once upon a time there was shame. Yes?
But this is not a new trend. I mean, the Romans and the Greeks were all about...
That's why I added the word, to make it public. It never has been.
Well, it was public. With the Greeks, it was the Olympics and all of the worshipping of the body and making...
To some extent. The work, but what you're doing is you're taking a culture, like the Greek culture, the Roman, that back then there were events where these things were in the open, but it was still not as public as it is today. As they say about Socrates, which is that time, he was once caught, in quotes, by his students doing something very, very ugly, not befitting for him. So you know what he said? Now I'm not Socrates the philosopher, now I'm Socrates the man. In other words, what do you mean? You can't be two things, right? You have to practice what you preach. right? But obviously, these individuals, as much as they were learned, they were not religious, and they were not so careful about certain things, but they hid it. He was hiding it. He concealed some of his habits. I mean, it's shameful. What you're talking about is certain events in the Olympics and certain things in the...
The whole culture, that's what they...
That was built around it. It was
Yeah.
built around it, but still, it was not everything was in the open, in the street. Today you go to... Somebody told me...
Statutes, the other thing.
Yeah, that's not something else. But today you go to parks in England, in London, and elsewhere in the world, where you can see these things in the open. There's beaches where people have no clothes on.
In Israel also.
I don't know about Israel, but I know in other parts of the world. What does that show? That there's no busha. The busha is completely lost. And that's lost because the purpose of life is not known to them, or they're not interested. So they have come down. Instead of being on a higher level, they come down to the level of animal. And the last statement, actually it's part of the same thing. Udelo, or the statement before it, Udelo yalef kitala hayav. One who does not teach is also hayav mitah. He deserves the death penalty. Similar to the one before, you don't learn, you don't teach. Yalef could be either to learn or to teach. In other words, if you stop learning altogether or stop teaching altogether, then there's no purpose for you to continue in this world. So Hillel is reminding us how connected Torah is with life. And if there's no Torah, then what's the purpose of life? So they may remove somebody from this life. He may leave. And last statement is the Ishtamash betagah halaf. It's all in Aramaic here. If you use the crown of Torah, chaz v'shalom, for your own purposes, halaf. In other words, Hashem will remove you. What's interesting about halaf here is that it doesn't use the same word as katala chayav before, chayav mitah. It doesn't use the word yasif. It doesn't use the word avad. These are all kinds of words to mean to lose. Whether it's to lose your name, to lose your Torah, their knowledge, to lose one's life, or halaf. Halaf is, apparently, it must be more serious than Ketala Chayav. Because we're talking about the crown of Torah. So this is the most dangerous one. One who uses the crown of Torah, meaning the Torah, the learning of the Torah, the title of Torah, for his own purposes, he's not only endangering his life, he's endangering the life of his kids, he's endangering his olam haba. So halaf means that he completely is removed from everything. Some therefore want to say that because of the serious remark here of halaf, that he's talking about Kabbalah Ma'asit. People who use Kabbalah Ma'asit means practical Kabbalah, for their own purposes. They use the names of the Kabbalah to perform all kinds of miracles. It's possible. I have a whole book on this. But it's very risky. You have to be very, very clean and pure and at a very, very high level. You have to know what you're doing. And even then, what you're doing has to be completely L'Shem Shamayim. It has to be for some worthy cause. Like the Ari and his students were involved sometimes in this kind of things. But they could do it. We're not on that level. Chaz v'shalom for anybody today to do any Kabbalah Ma'asida, unless he's at an exceptional level. Otherwise, according to tradition, anybody who gets involved with Kabbalah Ma'asid, the following can happen to him. Either he will lose his life prematurely, or one of his family members will lose their life prematurely, or he will convert to another religion, or one of his children will convert to another religion, or he will be poor and lose all his money. In other words, something terribly wrong will happen to him in a sudden way. That's one interpretation of these words, Udishtamash Batagah. The ordinary interpretation is the Ishtamash Batagah. We're talking about the crown of Torah for his own personal gain. As the rabbis tell us later on, אל תעשם כקרדום לחפור בה. Don't use the Torah as like a hammer, a hatchet, an axe to plow it. In other words, don't use it for your own personal gain, for your own needs. All the great rabbis of the time of the Gemara did not use their learning to their advantage, in other words, to gain money from it. They worked. We had shoe repair people, carpenters, those who used to draw water, They had some profession. You're not allowed to charge for Torah, unless it's called schar batala. Unless they're paying you, because at that time that you're teaching, you could be working somewhere else. That's called schar batala, the payment for being batel, for not being working at work. We need teachers. Those teachers are being paid schar batala. They could be working as plumbers, they could be working as plumbers, but we need them as teachers, so we pay them, so they should not be plumbers. But otherwise, somebody who already has his parnasah, which many of them did, should not be charging for Torah. Should not be using the crown of Torah, the title, the learning, for his own personal gain. Yeah.
So when Shammai charged for the students coming to the Beit Midrash, when Hillel didn't have the money and he went on the roof, that was okay?
Well, that was, to cover expenses of the place,
So that's okay?
Sure, imagine you have air conditioning, you have heating, you have janitors, so you want to use the premises. Of course, you can charge for that. Something.
Where do you draw the line?
But that's not for teaching. It was not for the rabbis to teach. It would necessarily. It could have been also to use the place. Who's going to pay for it? Who's going to support it?
It's the Beit Midrash, so you're supporting.
Right. So people usually, it's the same thing in the Beit Knesset. You get an aliyah, you give something. Sometimes they ask you, they sell you the aliyah. Sometimes you have to give on your own. So it's the same kind of an idea. You want to use the place, you want to benefit from it. You got to pay something. It has nothing to do with teaching. The teacher himself charging for his own personal gain just because he knows something you don't know. Right? You can't charge for that. Unless, of course, he has no other profession. I mean, he's not doing something else because he's teaching. As we said, that's called schar batala. So that's the other simple meaning of the words "Tishtamesh b'takach halab." Don't use the Torah for your own personal gain. The person who uses the Torah for his own personal gain is dangerous. Halaf, he could lose his life. He could lose more than just his life. In other words, it's people who use Torah for their own personal gain. It's a tremendous avon, tremendous sin. And as we said with Kabbalah, the crown of Torah is the names of Hashem. That's the crown of Torah. Also, personal gain. It's very, very serious. Okay, now we're going on to the next Mishnah, which is a very famous Mishnah. Not everybody fully understands it. They say it, they quote it, but we're going to go through it. And here too, there's several statements. Hillel continues on to tell us, הוא היה אומר, אם אין אני לי מי לי, וכשאני לעצמי מה אני, ואם לא עכשיו ומתי. So three things. אם אין אני לי, if I don't take care of myself, who will? I'll first translate it. And when I do something for myself only, what am I? And if I don't do it now, when will I do it? Three very different ideas, but three very important ideas. אם אין אני לי, מי לי. Okay, we just finished saying that a person should really not be thinking of himself. That was in a negative way. Now he talks about the positive. You do have to be interested in yourself. You do want to get ahead in life, in learning, right? And guess what? If you don't think about yourself, if you don't motivate yourself, if you don't make an effort, nobody's going to do it for you. What's the chidush here? What is he trying to point out over here? He's pointing out how important efforts are, how important motivation is, how a person has to have an interest in himself in getting ahead. I mean, obviously, you have to be motivated. But this is different than making money. Making money, even if you don't make an effort, but you have good mazal, it's going to come to you. Good effort, good mazal is something that can be very easy. Buy a lottery ticket, like some people just did recently, and share in the $650 million. How much effort was involved? Now, they may lose all that money. They may have a life full of aggravation and endless. Who knows what else happened? But the money can come very quickly and easily if that's what they decree upstairs. The only area in life where our efforts make the entire difference is in Torah and mitzvot. Akol bidei shamayim, chutz mirat shamayim. The only area in life where our efforts are directly responsible for how much we earn and how much we achieve is Torah and mitzvot. That we do. It has nothing to do with our mazal. How much money you make, lose, get, it all depends on the mazal or mishamayim. It could be an inheritance, it could be a lottery, it could be a business deal, it could be all kinds of things. Money has nothing to do with effort. Of course, you can't sit back at home and do nothing. Sometimes a person is so lucky that he does nothing and he still gets money. Yeah, but that's not the typical. The ordinary mazal is a person goes to work, opens up his business, or buys and sells, and that's how he earns. And if he has a great mazal, the buyers will keep coming back. Yeah, that's mazal. You know, what's good mazal? Here's an example, and this really happens all the time. A guy goes downtown when somebody comes over to him, and he's been having a hard time. Listen, I got a deal for you. What's the deal? I just got stuck with a couple of containers from China with jeans that are not selling. You know, I guess because it's, I don't know, rough material, something which is not the trend, not the style. I get stuck with it. I'll sell it to you for $2 a piece, you know, whatever, or sell you the whole container for 50, comes up to 50 cents, whatever it is, really, really dirt cheap. And you said to yourself, what am I going to do with it? You know, this guy is stuck with it. But you take it. But you say, you know what? I'll take a chance. What happens next? Not a week later or a month later. A half an hour later, this guy gets a call. The guy who bought the container. By the way, you know what? I'm looking to buy something like this and like this and like this. You know, the jeans. He describes to him the jeans. Something that is not too expensive. I have a client, you know, who, I have exactly what you need, you know. And he makes a ton of money on this within a half an hour of buying this, and he was hesitating to buy it or not. What's this? Mazal. Or it could also be a special berachah min hashamayim that he cried his heart out. He said Tehillim. He didn't, you know. So he said, okay, we're going to send you bakshish. Huh? Here, a tip. Yeah. Send you something here. This will keep you going for a couple of months. Yeah, everything is possible. How much effort? And he was hesitating, do it. This is hashgacha. Masal is also hashgacha. It's different kinds of hashgacha. That's all. There's a guy who can make some money. There's a guy who can make a lot of money. There's a guy who makes no money. But that's all masal. Mitzvot and Torah is not dependent on that. If a person goes to a shiur, he will learn. A person goes to pray, he will learn. A person who goes to pray betzibur with the minyan, he will have a different mitzvah than if he prayed at home. It's up to him. Puts on tzitzit in the morning, it's up to him. Puts on a mezuzah, up to him. Makes a beracha, rishona or achrona, up to him completely. Gives tzedakah, up to him. He smiles and is kind, gives a compliment, helps. Up to him completely. It has nothing to do with mazal whatsoever. And that's how he accumulates his credits. So therefore, if I don't take care of myself, if I don't try to advance myself in ruchaniut, in spiritual, Torah mitzvot, who will do it for me? On the other hand, if I do make an effort, I have a promise from Hashem that anybody who wants to become pure and wants to do a good deed, they will help him from above. They will guide him. They will give him the strength to do it. You want to really do it? For that, you get help. For doing something bad, they won't help you. They won't close the doors. The doors open. But they're not going to help you to do something bad. You want to do something good, you actually may get help. If you don't do it yourself, who's going to do it for you? Nobody. There's an exception. One little exception, which is a very interesting exception, and that is, we have a tradition, the Kabbalah speaks more about it, that at times a person may not do anything because he's not interested or he's not informed, and he doesn't go about doing a particular mitzvah or learn Torah or become even religious. It's just, he's disconnected. However, this man, either once upon a time during his earlier years, he did a beautiful mitzvah. He saved somebody's life. Or, he did not do a great mitzvah, but he has a grandparent who was a big tzaddik. What we call in Hebrew, zchut avot. He has the zchut, merits of his grandparents, who were very, very, very special people. So the Kabbalah teaches that sometimes an individual, even though he's uninformed, even though he's not doing anything on his own, me'orerim et nishmato, they awaken his soul to do teshuvah. This is especially true in the days of Mashiach. Our time, you will see people who did nothing, knew nothing, all of a sudden become interested. Why should he become interested? Right? You know, he comes from some village, you know, in some country where there was no Torah, right? Bandarabas. Yeah, place, you know, that is nothing. Why should he be interested all of a sudden? Come shurim. What was there? So what happens? It could be because of a grandfather, great-grandfather, who was a big tzaddik, or he did a tremendous maaseh tov, a good deed, and in Hashemayim they say, you know what, for that, me'orerim oto, they awaken him, especially right now when there's no time left. Mashiach is coming not any day, any moment. Any moment. Amen. Any moment. He could be coming. So therefore, if a person does not do teshuvah, he will be losing out so much. They awaken his soul. So they're awakening. He's not doing it on his own. They're awakening from above because of a zchut avot, or because of some zchut, because of some maaseh that he did. Yeah.
Is it the same thing true with the Maranos? A lot of the
that they're coming back. Yeah, Maranos. Sure. It could be that Hashem. This is the time of kibbutz galuyot. It's the time of the ingathering of the diaspora. So Hashem is ingathering many souls. Right? He's bringing together people who are connected to Judaism somehow. Because the prophet says Hashem doesn't want to abandon any soul. Nothing will be lost. Everybody at some point will come back.
South American countries, you see a lot of
also,
people,
that's right, South American countries, yeah.
Because they were Jews that were forced during the Inquisition and other times to embrace Christianity.
That's right, yeah. And somehow later on through reincarnations, future generations, the soul comes back in one way or another. Yeah, it could be, yeah. So in Nili Mili, the Hillel is reminding us a very, very strong point. If you're not going to take care of yourself, who will eventually do what you're supposed to do? Oh, here's this additional point, what you are supposed to do, because I think the Chidush Harim says, big rabbi once said, everybody has a unique tafkid, a unique mission. If you don't do what your unique mission is, nobody can duplicate what you're supposed to do. So if you are going to do it, Mili, who will be able to do what you are supposed to do? Now, there are people, unfortunately, who don't value themselves. You know where you see this a lot? In elections. Elections, a lot of people's attitude is, my vote doesn't count anyway. You're right. The problem is, what if everybody thinks like you? Then there's not going to be votes. What if everybody has the same attitude as you do, that, if I go to the event, there's going to be hundreds of people, thousands of people. They won't notice that I'm not there. What difference does it make my presence there? You're right, it may not make a difference, but if everybody thinks like that, then obviously it makes a difference. A person has to have the self-esteem of importance of that his contribution matters, that his presence in a place, in an election matters. Every vote counts. The presence of every individual matters. So if a person doesn't think like that his presence, that his contribution matters, then obviously nothing will happen. It will be missing. Something will be missing. One has to believe in himself that he contributes something through his efforts or through his presence. Then he goes on, Uchshaneh le'atzmi mani. But you by yourself cannot do everything. Yes. We do need to interact with others. We do need sometimes the help of others. And uchshani la'atzmi mani also means you can't only do for yourself. Life is about doing for others too. So here we're talking about the importance, of course, of doing for yourself. But uchshani la'atzmi, if I'm only doing for myself mani, I'm incomplete. What am I? Life is about doing for others. The Torah tells us when it comes to tzedakah, naton titen. It says double. Give, you should give. Anek ta'anik. Patoach tiftach. The Torah uses double languages for emphasis. You want to get used to becoming a giver. You know how you do that? By giving a lot. Regularly. So naton titen, when a person gives on a regular basis, umesagel le'atzmo midat hanetina. In other words, he basically gets used to and trains himself with the characteristic of giving. So that's what part of life is all about. Not only for yourself, which is important, of course, but ukshani latzmi mani. If I only think of myself, I'm incomplete. You can't only think of yourself. You have to involve yourself with others. Otherwise, you're incomplete. And finally, we've come to the last part of his statement. V'im lo achshav ematai. And if I don't do it now, when will I do it? We're talking about spirituality. We're talking about Torah mitzvot. We're not talking about money. Because money, you know what they say about money. Money comes and goes. Let's say somebody lost money. He lost a lot of money. Those thousands of dollars that he lost can be recovered. It can be. It may take a lot of time. But money can be recovered. Time cannot be recovered. Every day that goes by is gone. What could have been done on that day cannot be done tomorrow. Hopefully we can still do things tomorrow. Hopefully Hashem should give us years so that we should accomplish. But whatever has transpired, whatever is gone is gone. In Arabic there's a saying, lifat mat. Right? All that has gone by is dead. It's gone. You can't bring it back. So that's what he's emphasizing over here. We're talking about the importance of doing, of making an effort. Make sure you do it today. Because if you don't do it today, when are you going to do it? Tomorrow? What if tomorrow doesn't come? Yeah, some people don't wake up the next day. Who says tomorrow is going to come? Who says? It's not guaranteed. And even if tomorrow comes, or even if the opportunities present themselves, the opportunities in the past are not going to come back. I tell it to people who do teshuvah when they're 50s or 60s. Baruch haba, welcome, kol hakavod lecha, very nice, how special of you. I'm sure Hashem is so proud of you. But there's one thing that you can never do at this point. Huh?
Your past?
What about the past?
It's gone.
Okay, so he didn't put on tefillin for 40 years. Hashem forgives him for that. Obviously, it's a big loss. You know what can be a bigger loss than that? The children that he was raising for the past 30 years. They're not going to do teshuvah just because Abba and Mami did. They might actually think they're crazy. The parents. The kids who went to public school, who were raised in an irreligious way, have their own free will, their own life, their own world. They may not be as excited as the parents are. I've seen this. So very nice that they're coming back, they're coming to their senses, very nice that they're making a U-turn, but had you done it earlier, you could have taken your whole family with you. Uri Zohar was lucky. Even though he was at the very, very other end, extreme of spirituality, let's call it, he was totally detached from it, very, very far removed from it. He's an Ashkenazi, remember. Sephardim, many of them at least, if they're not religious, their father or grandfather was. You have Ashkenazi Jews, especially from the Russia area, who it may be 5 generations not religious. No Torah, or at least 3 or 4 generations. It's a lot. They're very, very, for them to do teshuvah, it takes a lot more courage. And here he was able to come back. His wife didn't want to in the beginning. That's very tough when one wants it, the other one doesn't want it. It's a big war. Milchemet Gog and Magog in the house. And the kids were still young enough. And he immediately moved them to another school. So you have the help of the school and the friends, the environment. Oh, Baruch Hashem. He's beautiful. It's so special to see that. He's part of the revolution of Teshuvah. But how it happened, obviously it could be, I didn't look into his family. Who knows who his great-grandfather was? Who knows what he did? All I know is that he took a tremendous amount of courage. Either way, regardless of the zchut, it took tremendous amount of courage. And the reason why he succeeded was because he was a man of truth. He's not a faker or a liar. In other words, you convinced him, you showed him, you proved to him. He was open-minded. You know what he said? He's pained till today. How could they deprive us of our heritage? This country, this government. How could they do this to us? He was so pained by it. He's so upset. Give a child a chance and let him decide on his own if he wants it or not. To take it away from us. So anyway, even though that has happened, unfortunately, in the past, Kadosh Baruch Hu has his own mechanisms of bringing Jews back, and he's helping. But they got to do an effort. They have to make an effort too. So if we don't do it now, when will we do it? That is why, because of this, we have a lot of sayings in many languages that say, don't push off for tomorrow what you can do today. You've heard of that? Tomorrow may not come. And as Benjamin Franklin, I think, said, if you love life, don't waste time. Because that's what life is made up of. Life is made up of time. So if you love life, don't waste time. Don't waste your hours. The Chafetz Chaim used to give a beautiful mashal about time. How sometimes people don't realize it until it's too late. Somebody once went on vacation. So having a great time, seeing all the sights. He decides to send a postcard, a gluya, a postcard to his family. So he starts writing in the beginning of the postcard, the regular titles of date, dear so-and-so, how are you? Baruch Hashem, I'm okay. And he starts writing regular handwriting. By the time, after his whole introduction, he realizes he's running out of room. And he starts writing smaller letters, and then he sees that the postcard is almost finished, so he starts writing on the margins, all around. He barely managed to do anything, to say anything, and the postcard is finished. There's no more room. Because a lot of people don't realize until later in their life that their time is almost up. And now they start doing everything, there's no time left. All of a sudden they become, nervous. Alevai, they should become nervous. Some of them don't even realize that their time is running out. But at that time, it's already very, very late. So don't push it off, because then there's very little you can do. And even if you can do, even if a person can do in his later part of his life, it's not the same as in his earlier years. When a person is younger, he has much more strength to do battle with the Yetzer Hara, to be able to control his midot, his character, to change. Later on in life, it's much more difficult to change our ways. That is why Shlomo Melech says in Mishlei, Chanoch l'nar al pi darko gam ki yaskin lo yasur mimena. Train your child in his earlier years, according to his ways, according to his abilities. But give him as much as you can in his earlier years, l'nar, when he's young. Because if you do so, gam ki yaskin, in his later years, lo yasur mimena, he will not depart from it. It will stay with him. He got used to it. It becomes second nature to him. So the earlier one starts and the more one gives them, even though they may not catch on to it, even though they don't follow it 100%, guess what? Because you gave it to him, it's in the back of his mind, it's in the memory bank, it's there, he may come back to it. A lot of kids who grew up very, very strong, very religious, even though they went off the derech a little bit, but they were imbued, they absorbed so much, it's not lost. It's there, it left an impression, it made an impact, and even though it's not noticeable right now, it will be later on, possibly. We have to pray. Our mothers used to pray and cry before they lit the candles. So you have to pray, you have to do your best, send it to the right schools, obviously, and all of that, and hope that Hashem, of course, who's also a partner, will help too. But if we do that in earlier years, the chances are better that it will make a difference later on. It is chaval, very, very much chaval, that a person doesn't make good use of the time in his earlier years. Later on, it's just more difficult. And I'm reminded by this with people today when you try to buy an airline ticket. You look in the internet or you call up. How much is it? It depends where you're going. $1,200 to Israel. Oh, that's a good deal. It's a low season, Baruch Hashem. Otherwise, it could be $1,500, $1,600, $1,700, $1,800. Okay, I'm not sure about the hour, the flight, the day, tomorrow. You know, you call back 5 minutes later, it went up $100. Have you ever had that experience? Yeah, it goes up. The prices are changing constantly because you're not the only one buying. And the more people buy, the less seats are available for that fare. And this happens with hotels. It happens with anything else. You have to convince yourself of what you want and get it over with and buy it. Otherwise, it becomes more expensive. With time in life, later on, it becomes more difficult to do whatever we could have done in our earlier years. It would have been a lot easier. So that's the last part of this Mishnah in giving us the sense of how important time is. Something that is right, something that is good, don't push it off. Do it as soon as you can because the opportunity may never come back. That is why the Zohar gives us a completely different interpretation on the words Mipnei Seva Takum. The simple meaning of that pasuk and that mitzvah is that when you see somebody who's elderly, get up, even if he's not Jewish. Give him the kavod. Give him your seat. Respect those who are elderly, especially those who are elderly and they have chokhmah and they're knowledgeable. The Zohar says, "Mipnei seva takum," before you become seva, before you become a senior citizen, takum, get up and do teshuvah. Before you get to that stage in life, make sure that you've already woken up and you've already gotten yourself on the right track to do the right thing. Because once you're there already, it's very difficult. And even if you want, you may not be able to. Who knows? Hashem Yazor that we should be healthy and that we should have a strength in our faculties till the last day.
Amen.
But there's no guarantee, right? So therefore, the earlier, the younger, the better. Therefore, before you get to that point of life, make sure that you get up and you do the right thing. Thank you.
Zacharu.